Hello friends, welcome. My name is Lauren. I'm so excited for this video because it's finally Summerween. If you somehow don't already know, Summerween is a week-long readathon hosted by Gabby Reads here on YouTube. And this is my first year on BookTube, so it's also my first year ever participating in Summerween, and I'm just so excited. Halloween is my favorite holiday of all time, so getting to celebrate it twice is incredible. The theme this year is kind of like a desert, Area 51 alien vibe, which I just love, and I think I've picked the most perfect TBR for this theme. I will say before I get into it, I have a full-time job and I'm also a pretty slow reader, so I'm definitely not going to be like other booktubers who are reading like a book a day or more. I'm going to be doing a lot of short stories, novellas, and audiobooks, so hopefully I'll be able to finish everything by the end of the week, but I don't think reading a million books is the point anyway. It's just to have a good time and get into the Summerween spirit. Okay, so with that out of the way, here is my TBR. There are 5 prompts this year. The first is to read a book in the dark. I'm currently reading Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab, so I think I'm gonna try reading that one in the dark. If you don't already know, this is V.E. Schwab's newest release, and it's all about vampires, so I think this is just gonna be perfect for this week and especially to read in the dark. And I do have a video that will already be posted at this point where I read some new releases, and this one is included in that. So if you want my full in-depth thoughts on this book, you can go check out that video. The next prompt is to read a horror or thriller book, and for that I've picked Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This is a sci-fi horror about a group of women who are sent on an expedition to Area X, which is a region that has been cut off from the rest of the world for decades for mysterious reasons. 11 expeditions have come before, most ending in tragedy, and now we're following the 12th expedition. I've been wanting to read this book for so long. It just sounds like it was literally made for me, and I knew I wanted to include a sci-fi book in my TBR since we do have that alien Area 51 theme going on, and to be able to read a sci-fi that's also a horror and it's pretty short so I can get through it in just a few days. It's just so perfect. The next prompt is to read a book with a sky on the cover. For this, I have picked a classic in the Goosebumps series, Welcome to Dead House. I was obsessed with Goosebumps when I was a kid. I loved all things ghosts and monsters, so these books were just right up my alley. I know I've read so many of them, but this is the only one that I have like a vivid memory of reading and like kind of remember what happens in it. So I'm excited to see if I'm remembering the twist correctly. And I have not read any Goosebumps books since I was a kid, so I'm interested to see if they hold up as an adult. I also got this one on audio through Libby, and it's only a 3-hour audiobook, so I'll definitely just pick one evening this week and listen to the whole thing, maybe do a craft or something. I can't wait. The next prompt is to read a book that you've owned for more than a year, and for that I chose this Agatha Christie short story collection. I got this from a thrift store either last year or a few years ago, and I'm gonna be honest, I only bought it because I thought the cover looked super like cool and retro, and it was like $1 since it's basically falling apart, but I still haven't read any of the short stories from it, so I wanted to give it a shot, and what could be more perfect for Summerween than reading a spooky murder mystery from the Queen of Mysteries. The main one that I want to read in this is called The Dressmaker's Doll. One of my favorite Twilight Zone episodes of all time is the one about the creepy murderous doll, so I'm hoping that this gives kind of the same vibes as that, and I'm looking forward to it. And lastly is to read either a novella, manga, or audiobook, and for this I've picked Sundial by Catriona Ward, which I will be listening to on audio through Libby. This is a psychological horror / thriller about a woman named Rob and her daughter Callie, who starts behaving very strangely. She's collecting animal bones and talking to imaginary friends, and Rob is worried about her as this behavior reminds her of her own family and strange events from her childhood. So Rob decides to take Callie to her own childhood home deep in the Mojave Desert, and there she will have to make a choice. I'm so excited for this book. I love Catriona Ward, and I think she is so underrated. You either love her books or you absolutely hate them, and so far I've really enjoyed everything I've read from her. I'm usually not into thrillers, but I've read The Last House on Needless Street and Looking Glass Sound, and I've really loved both of them. I definitely think her books lean more horror than thriller, which I really love, and I mean this one is set in the Mojave Desert, so I could not have found a more perfect book for this year's theme. Okay, so that is my TBR for this week. I cannot wait to get into these books and short stories. I'm also going to be doing whatever I can to get into the cozy, spooky Summerween vibe, so I'm hoping to do some baking, maybe watch something scary, and I will definitely be watching the Summerween episode of Gravity Falls, and if you're not watching that this week, then what are you doing? That episode is a classic. I hope you guys had a great Summerween. I know this this video will probably go up well after Summerween's already over, but honestly for me, all of summer is Summerween. So now I just have to wait for it to get dark so I can start on that first prompt. See you there! Okay, so I actually had such a good time reading in the dark last night. I don't know why I don't do that more often for every spooky, scary book that I read, because setting an ambiance like that really took the reading experience to a new level, and Barrier Bones was just the perfect book to be reading in the dark. It's so atmospheric and eerie, so yeah, it was just perfect. And again, if you want my full thoughts on that book, you can check out my most recent video. Today, I'm gonna get started on Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This book has a lot of mixed reviews, so I'm interested to see what camp I fall into. I did see on Goodreads that Elizabeth, aka Plant-Based Bride, gave this book 5 stars, and I feel like I tend to love the books that she recommends, so I have high hopes for this one, but we shall see. I will let you know all my thoughts on this one when I'm done. Okay, so I just finished Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, and I'm so glad I read it. This was literally the perfect Summerween book, and especially for this year's theme with the alien element going on. The atmosphere was incredible. I love a book where like the environment or setting is written almost like a character of its own, and that's really how the environment felt in this book. I also actually really enjoyed reading from the main character's perspective. I definitely would not say she's a likable character, but I did love getting to see the world through her biologist's mind. One of my favorite types of horror media in general are ones like this where it doesn't really feel like a horror book. It almost feels just like a literary sci-fi book, but with a very unsettling atmosphere so that you're kind of just always on edge waiting for something scary to happen. And for me, there were 1 or 2 parts that were genuinely horrifying and they were so worth the build-up. So I ended up settling on a 4.5 stars for this one. It was an almost perfect book for me, except for the last like 15 pages ended up being a little anticlimactic, and I was just left wanting more from the story. And I know there's 2 more books in the series, but just based on the reviews, it seems like the next one is not as good as the first one. And that's something I really struggle with in a series, and it can really ruin my enjoyment of the series as a whole if the sequels are not as good as the first one. Even if I absolutely love one book in the series, if the next ones aren't just as good or better, it really makes me not like the whole thing. And I know this is probably just something I should work on because it prevents me from starting series if I'm not 100% sure the sequels are going to be just as good as the first one. I think my issue is just that I really hate having high expectations for something and being disappointed. Like, I can have a good time with a not super well written book if I go into it knowing it's not going to be peak literature, but if an author shows me what they're capable of in the first book and then lowers their standards from there, I just really can't stand that. And that's why I love going into books with pretty low expectations. Anyway, that's my rant for today. Let me know if you guys ever feel the same or if I should just get over it and lower my standards. But yeah, I still really enjoyed Annihilation. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to the rest of the series. I kind of don't want to ruin my experience with this one. But yeah, let me know if you've read any of the sequels and if they're worth it. I definitely recommend this first book, especially if you're like me and you like weird sci-fi with a very strong atmosphere and setting. So yeah, we're off to a very strong start this Summerween, so I'm hoping that momentum continues. Tonight I'm going to be listening to Welcome to Dead House, and I think I'm going to do a little craft while I listen. We'll see, but I'm so excited, and I'll see you there.
talking Tina. The doll that does everything. A lifelike creation of plastic and springs. Without her, he'd never enter Twilight Zone.
Okay, so I have finished both Welcome to Dead House and 2 short stories from this collection. I'm gonna start with my review of this one. So I started with The Dressmaker's Doll, like I mentioned earlier, and it was just okay. It was definitely like classic spooky haunted doll, but the ending felt like so anticlimactic. And then I ended up just watching the Living Doll episode of Twilight Zone right after I finished this, and it was basically the same vibes but so much better, and it's just much better storytelling. So highly recommend that episode if you've never seen it. I also read another story in here called The Last Seance, and it started out interesting. It was about a woman who's a medium and holds seances for people to connect with their dead loved ones. You start to see that her soon-to-be husband seems to be forcing her to do these seances, even though they're making her super sick and exhausted. So that was a really interesting premise, but the actual story and the ending were just so like dumb and goofy. It just made me laugh when I know it was not supposed to be funny. I don't know if I would recommend this unless you're like a diehard Agatha Christie fan. I was gonna read more stories from here, but I kind of just gave up after that one, and it was clear that this is like not her best work. It was one of her earliest writing. I think it's from the 20s. It was definitely fun. I love having this copy because I think the cover is so cool. I will hold on to it. Maybe eventually I'll read some of the other stories. There is a Poirot one in here that I wanted to get to, but I just didn't know if I was gonna love it, and I didn't want to put myself into a reading slump over it. So that was that. And now for Welcome to Dead House. Maybe it's the nostalgia talking, but this was so fun. It 100% holds up as an adult. The only thing that I was like a little bit put off by was the like multiple mentions of 2 different characters' weight and like them being overweight, which like, yeah, it was the early 2000s, so it's pretty par for the course, unfortunately. It was a little weird to see that in a children's book, but other than that, it was so fun. It had such a spooky atmosphere, and the plot was like genuinely interesting. It was a lot scarier than I remember it being. I'm like honestly surprised that I read these books as like an 8-year-old. The ending of this one is pretty horrifying, to be honest. I also mentioned earlier that I had a vivid memory of this one, but it turns out I was thinking of a different Goosebumps book. So now I'm just gonna have to read all of them until I find the one that I was thinking of. There's so many Goosebumps that are set in the summer, so I think it would be really fun to just kind of go through all of those ones leading up to Halloween, and then I can read the ones that are actually set in the fall and Halloween. Oh, I also made this necklace while I was reading it, and I think it turned out really cool and interesting. I also ended up making this one that I really love. It's just a nice little blue and silver little thing. I also have been watching a ton of the show Charmed recently, so I'm very much in like a 90s witch vibe right now, and I think this is perfect. It reminds me of the necklace that Sandra Bullock wears in like literally one scene in Practical Magic. I really like it, and now the only thing I have left to finish is Sundial by Catriona Ward, so I'm really excited. And I'm really sad that Summerween's almost over. I literally just moved a few days ago to a new apartment, and it currently looks like this in my room. I am eventually going to do a video about redecorating my bookshelves, so stay tuned for that. So I thought it would be a pretty good idea to try to get through some of this mess while I listen to my audiobook. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. And I've got my cowboy shirt on. Thought that was perfect for the desert theme, especially with this audiobook set in the desert. Yeah, let's see how much of this we can get through. Okay, so I have finished Sundial by Catriona Ward, and honestly, this might be my new favorite book of hers. I really had the best time with this one. I actually really wish that I had read this physically instead of on audio, because I always have a hard time following a story through audiobook, and I just feel like I could have gotten so much more immersed in this story and this setting if I had read it physically. I also just don't love a lot of audiobook narrators, especially this one. The voice was a little bit annoying, but regardless, it was so good. This is definitely a top tier Summerween read. It technically does take place in the winter, but I feel like the desert setting makes it feel very hot and dry and summery. I would classify this as a perfect summer read. This is another one of those types of horror books that I just absolutely love, where not a ton happens, but something just feels off the entire time and you're trying to figure out why it feels off. It's just overall unsettling and you don't know why until you do know why, and everything just makes sense. Also, as someone who is scared of big dogs, this book was truly horrifying for me. I absolutely love the atmosphere of this book and the setup of a family that's both hippie, libertarian vibes, but also scientists doing experiments. And I just thought that was so interesting. And the themes of like ethics and science, but also the lengths that a parent will go to give their child the best life they possibly can. All of it was just so interesting. And that's what I love about Catriona Ward that I feel like we don't get a lot in other more popular thrillers. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with reading a thriller for pure entertainment, but I do love a book that's actually trying to say something or exploring some sort of issue or idea. And I think this did such a good job with raising super interesting questions. I also really appreciate that almost everything that's brought up throughout the story is there for a reason and makes sense in the end. One of my biggest pet peeves of all time is a red herring. Like something's just brought up to throw you off the trail or distract you and is never brought up again and not important to the story. And I feel like Catriona Ward's books have very few, if any, red herrings, and I just love that. And another thing that I think sets her books apart is her character work. Like, you really get inside these characters' heads and you feel for them. Even the daughter Callie, I thought at first was the most annoying character I've ever read, but by the end I genuinely felt for her and everything she's been through. And just in general, the relationship dynamics are so well written in this book. I would say definitely check trigger warnings before going into this. There's a lot of abuse, both human and animal. I still highly recommend it if you're looking for a really interesting horror book set in the desert with some genuinely shocking plot twists. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. There's definitely a lot going on and it can be a little hard to follow at times, but honestly that's probably because I was listening to it on audio, so I'm definitely going to have to reread this at some point physically. And the other reason that I'm not giving it 5 stars is how annoying the daughter talks. The Callie dialogue was just a little bit too cringe for me. But like, tweens are cringy, so I do think it's pretty accurate, but it was still a little tough to get through those parts. Okay, so that is the end of this Summerween vlog. I'm honestly so sad it's over. I was having so much fun planning this video and putting it all together. At least actual Halloween is only like 3 months away, but realistically I start pretending that it's fall in like August, so I really don't have to wait too long. But yeah, I hope you guys had a great Summerween. Thank you to Gabby Reads for hosting this readathon. I had so much fun participating, and thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later. Bye!